Hi there. Welcome to this Undiet Your Monday Live. I'm excited to be with you. I missed last week. I was out of the office. I was at the beach and it was a lovely time, super relaxing. I'm one of those beach people who doesn't like to really do anything, but just like stare at either the ocean or the sound or whatever. So that's what I did. Hey, Jamie. Hey, Bex. I'm so glad that you all could join me. And today's live is about what to do at Diet Rock Bottom. This is actually a part one of two. And this part one, obviously, I'm doing here live, but part two, I'm going to record after I'm done here to be the next podcast episode for next week. So if you are someone who is new to the non diet space, or you've been trying to make the non diet thing work for you, I'm recording this for you. And if you are someone maybe even who has been doing it for a long time, but just wants to add some new tools, I think you'll also find some nuggets here. A lot of the tools that I'm talking about are included in the Find Your Food Voice book. So if you find yourself really liking some of the things I'm talking about, this is a book that is just full of all the tools that I used to teach my clients over probably like a 2-year time span in a $20 book that you can have and go through in a week. So, there'll be a link below in the follow up after this video. I always send out an email afterwards. So there's a link to it to get to it, but you can find the book, Find Your Food Voice, anywhere books are sold. And, okay, so let's get started. I want to start by telling you about when a client would come in and they would say that they were told they had to start a new diet, but they just couldn't start another one. And they really either wanted to do intuitive eating work, or maybe they didn't even have an idea that intuitive eating existed, but they just knew they could not go on another diet. And this is a space that a lot of us refer to as diet rock bottom, kind of the spot of like, I don't know what to do next. I just know I can't do another diet. And this is a space that I've spent a lot of time with clients. So this is a spot where I often would tell people, hey, have you heard of intuitive eating? Because that is one tool that so many people have heard about. And there's lots of tools out there for us to use that kind of method. And I would often tell people to read through the 10 principles of intuitive eating, come back at the next appointment and tell me which, if any, they were drawn to. And there were basically 2 paths that I saw happening at that point. And this is for those of you who choose one certain path. So some people would read the intuitive eating principles and say, "Oh, yeah, I loved all of them. I'm super excited. Where do I begin?" And so basically at that point I was like, "Okay, just let's start where you are most pulled to and let's go there first." Honestly, that was a very rare circumstance. Most people that I talk to, and I wonder if this happened to you, if you ever read through the intuitive eating principles or tried to do intuitive eating, most people were like, yeah, this sounds great, but that sounds terrifying. Like, there's no way that I'm going to be able to do what intuitive eating is asking me to do, which, from the surface level, intuitive eating is relying on your body, right? It's like relying on what your body is telling you and mending and repairing your relationship with food so you can trust it and feel okay with it. Well, again, so many people and most people that I talk to were like, that's terrifying. What do I do now? Can I not? Do I have to do a diet? And I'm like, no, 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 no. And this tool, which I basically call it like pivoting. Like, we basically need to help you pivot from only knowing how to eat from diets and pivot to maybe make a bridge over to a non diet way of living. And this pivot reminds me a lot of um, yoga props. So I know for me, going to yoga classes over the years, I'm just thinking I'm having some memories, some flashbacks are coming in. So many yoga teachers would show a pose and say, "This is the full expression of the pose." And then they would show like the whole like steps and everything. And then they'd say, okay, now if that's not accessible to you, here are some props. And they would show you and, like, be most of the time people were pretty gentle about only do what you can do and things like that. But starting it out by saying that using the props is preventing you from actually being able to do yoga, like explaining it that way, I I didn't like that. It made me feel like I wasn't good enough. And I feel really lucky in the body liberation space. There's tons of yoga teachers, and my favorite person that's a yoga teacher is Laura Burns. I don't think she's on Substack, but she's on Instagram. Her handle is Radical Body Love, but she's someone with PCOS that I've done lots of work with in the past. But what she has taught me that she does, and I've gone to some of her yoga classes before, is she just like teaches the poses with the props. Like, that's how you do it. And I think a lot about how we start non-diets work is, why don't we just start with the props instead of like, hey, just stop dieting. How about we give you some guardrails to help you pivot away? And so that's what this is. This is a way to help your brain to sort of just start to gently look in the other direction. So this is actually based on research from Christopher Fairburn. He's a researcher from the 90s and early 2000s. And actually, I don't even know if he's still alive, but that's a moot point. But his research talks a lot about, um, or let me say that again. His research has looked at how the brain is processing in the times of compulsive kind of thoughts about food, whether someone has binge eating disorder or bulimia. Those are the two areas that his research mostly specialized in. And what his research is based on is mostly cognitive behavioral therapy. And I have to tell you, I'm trained as a therapist. And so I got lots of training in different types of modalities. CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, is one that, I got lots of education on, and I feel like it's a useful tool, but it's not one that I rely on. I am definitely more relational, and yeah, the relationship means more to me than most CBT type of therapists, and I still use some of it. And Christopher Fairburn's research, he basically went through this research to figure out how can we help a person whose brain is used to always thinking about food to get used to having breaks in it. And thinking it from like a clinical research base, what he described is that the human brain is not supposed to be thinking about food all the time. Like, the way that we're designed to think about food, like through evolution, is like when we need food. So if you're hungry or if you don't have enough food around, your brain is supposed to think about it. And then when you're starting to prepare it, maybe gathering things, grocery shopping or whatever, thinking about food, but we're not supposed to be thinking about it all day long. Well, of course, if you are in the throes of an eating disorder, if you've been told to diet with your insulin resistance or your PCOS, your brain's going to fixate on food because of high insulin levels. And then if you've just been told to eat less, that alone is enough to help your brain feel really preoccupied with food. A lot of people have been using the word food noise. Words? No. Using the phrase food noise to describe this, like this kind of constant food talk. And food noise is something that your brain is not supposed to experience except in times of distress when you don't have enough food. And so, what I found early on helping people with intuitive eating is, like, it's really hard to go from having constant food thoughts to then relying on your body and not thinking about food. Like, there needed to be this bridge. And just like the yoga props that Laura taught me about, I found that if you could start to practice using some of the research that I found with Christopher Fairburn, you just allowed yourself to have these kind of pauses timed throughout the day, then you could start to get your brain and your body used to having moments. At first, it's just moments without thinking about food. And eventually the moments become longer and longer. And when I describe this method, it sounds really simple, but and some of my clients would be like, "Julie, this doesn't sound like it's gonna do anything." But it's one of those things like, please just try it and tell me what you think, because most people would come back to like 2 weeks later and feel so much different about their ability to just know what their body needs. So these pauses, that's what I'm going to teach right now. These pauses are, again, based on Christopher Fairbairn's research, and they help you to ground yourself and ask yourself a number of questions where you can just check in with your body. And that is something that Fairbairn's research said is like basically, if you're used to having food thoughts or food noise all the time, helping your brain just have timed experiences where you will pause and have a few moments where you ground yourself and ask yourself what your body needs. And what I have found is having these check-in times every 2 to 3 hours throughout the day is the most, like, efficient way to move through this, and I say it like that because, I mean, that just comes from working with lots of people, but you may find that you need to tweak it a little bit. I would not check in longer than 3 hours. I pick those times for a reason because the human brain needs glucose going to it constantly. And around the 3 to 4 hour mark after a meal, if this person is consistently been eating and getting enough and has no threat of deprivation, that's why you can't go longer. But if you have been consistently eating, about the 3 to 4 hour mark, blood sugar starts to dip, your body tells you it needs more. And so I like to help people check in before it hits that point if we can, to avoid things like panic hunger. And we can talk another time about panic hunger, but that's something that is really important in this process too. So this pause, I call it chips. So if you listen to the Find Your Food Voice podcast, you probably heard me talk about chips. We have a segment on the show called Chips and Dip, and it's basically these check-in props, and so CHIP, so check-in props, and what I have you do is in these props, they basically are moments where you design to check in and pause. And basically, trying to decide how I'm going to teach this. Let's talk about first the timing, and then I'll describe to you what you actually do in the pause. But the timing's really important because a lot of us at this time of day, we're busy, especially if you're working. You got lots of things going on, or maybe you're at home with and taking care of people, and so you're busy. And it's later at night that a lot of us have more downtime, and the food noise can be super loud. So, what you want to do though is you want to have these pauses throughout the day and not just later at night. So, the first pause is within an hour of waking up, and then every 2 to 3 hours after that. I know for some of you, this may be kind of hard to do. Maybe you're a teacher or you work as a telemarketer and you only get to have a break at a certain time when the screen flashes. I've had those jobs before where I've had to do that. And so it may be kind of hard to do, but just do the best you can. And just remember every 2 to 3 hours. And what I would do with clients is we would write out a schedule, and sometimes we would need a different schedule for work days versus days when people were off. And again, yeah, do the best you can. And then the pause, what you want to do, let's just say 12:15, because it's 12:17 now, but let's just say 12:15 is a check, blah, 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 is a check in time for you. It's a pause moment. And what I want you to do first is experiment with a grounding technique that works for you. So that can just be, taking your hands off a keyboard if you're at a computer, looking outside. If you can, even go outside and touch grass, feel the air, do anything that helps you to just like feel nature. I think that's super grounding. But if you can't do that, you're stuck in an office building or with a crying baby that you're holding, just doing something, whether it's like a deep breath in or something that helps you for 10 seconds just to ground. Feel the support of the chair or the ground at your feet, and then set the stage. So after you've grounded yourself for a few minutes, or not a few minutes, for a few moments, you can pull out your voice finder cord. So this is a cord that I teach people to make in the Find Your Food Voice book. And each knot and braid in it has meaning behind it. And these check-in props actually are some of the knots here on the green string at the bottom. But if you pull out the cord itself, it's another way to ground yourself, like even just going through and touching all the different knots and braids and feeling through it, just having some kind of concrete, kind of visceral thing that you're doing. And what I coach you to do in the book is to remind yourself of the three key parts of a food voice. A food voice is always nurturing, it's always kind, and it's always flexible. So when you're doing these check in props, you're grounding yourself and you're getting yourself ready to ask yourself questions. You want to say, my food voice is always kind, it is always nurturing, and it's always flexible. And this is something that takes lots of time to learn, but it's a big part of having to discern between what is like the diet culture noise or the food noise versus your food voice. You know, the secure um, adult kind of voice that you want to connect with as you're mending your relationship with food. Okay. So after you ground, after you've kind of set the stage and you've kind of gotten to a place to hopefully connecting to more compassion, then I want you to ask some barometer questions. So if you're not big into weather, a barometer basically helps us to know some certain parts of weather and helps us to know certain oh my gosh, so even thinking about what that even is at this moment, isn't it have to do with like pressure and things like that? But asking yourself barometer questions in this instance basically helps you to know, like, what's the lay of the land right now? And I ask questions in the book for you to practice asking yourself. So I'm going to grab it right now. They are questions like, am I hot or cold? Very simple, right? But this is a question that is very important in Christopher for everyone's research on like the CBT mindfulness kind of connection with repairing your relationship with food. He encourages folks to think of something very simple, very black and white, to kind of just get you into a place where you're not judging. Like if I'm hot or cold, I'm not going to judge it, you know? And right now, of course, it feels like 1,000 degrees out, so I'm hot. And then the next question is, what am I feeling? And I'm a big feeler, but if you are someone who doesn't really think in that way, you may ask yourself, what messages am I getting from my brain? You may even ask yourself, do I need to use the bathroom? Again, another kind of question outside of like hunger and fullness that is not as judgmental is just like, do I need to go pee? Again, it just helps your brain connect to your body in a way that's not very threatening. But after you go through those first three, the next one I encourage you to ask is, what are my thoughts focused on? And as I'm going through these questions, I just want to remind you, I always send out a summary from these lives. So all these questions will be in there, but they're also in the Find Your Food Voice book. So if you like some of these tools that I'm describing here, you can get them in the book. And okay, so then the fourth question is, what are my thoughts focused on right now? So kind of checking in, like, what's your brain doing? Is your brain telling you this is a waste of time? Is your brain telling you, I got to get back to work? I don't have time for this. What is your brain doing in that moment? You know? And then it goes into more of hunger and fullness. Am I physically hungry right now? How do I know? You know, how do you know if you're hungry or not? And this is a big part of finding your food voice is your vocabulary for how you know you need to eat more. I know what I like what sensations I have, but that's me and I want you to find for you what's the way that your body's going to tell you that it needs to eat more. And then the next question and the last one is, am I emotionally hungry? And I have a lot to say about emotional eating. If you've gone through any of my um, essays I've written before or listened to my podcast, you probably have already heard that I am someone that thinks emotional eating is fine. It's a really normal part of being a human being and important to not shame. And I also think it's important to be able to start to discern when you're experiencing physical hunger versus emotional hunger and practice different ways of meeting your needs. Um, the choices you make in response to asking those questions, that to me, those are like not important. It's just practicing asking those questions and you learning the language of your body. Okay. So those are the questions. That's the pause. The chip pause is incredibly important in the find your food voice space. It's something that if intuitive eating has felt messy or just terrifying or just like you just couldn't figure out a step, this is the tool that I would encourage you to experiment with to see if this helps. Like I mentioned, I encourage you to ask these questions every 2 to 3 hours. Write out a schedule, put an alarm on your phone, whatever you need to do to remember. If you forget, I hope you can just roll with it. This is not something that you probably have done before and it's tricky. It takes a couple days for my clients to usually figure out how to make this work. But what I want you to know is that as you are checking in and you're practicing these kind of grounding techniques, when you basically figure out in that process, like if you're asking, am I hungry? And if you're hungry, I hope you can go ahead and meet that need. If you're emotionally hungry, whether you're going to eat or do something to help with your emotions in that point, I hope you're able to meet that need. If you're not able to, I hope you can have compassion for yourself in that moment. And this is just one step, um, I'll be doing a part 2 to talk about what to do after this, but just know that this is just one step. There's no right or wrong way to do this. It's really getting you used to practicing, checking in so your mind and body connection reunites. And after about 2 to 3 weeks of doing these check-in props, my clients would come back saying, "Oh my gosh, I have this whole new way of relying on my body." Like people had this new vocabulary. They understood their hunger and fullness more. Typically, hunger was easier to kind of connect with than fullness. That one tends to be a little trickier. Um, but basically, it'll arm you with your data, your tools that me as a dietitian or any diet company could never provide you. It gives you tools that help you, which is always what I'm rooting for, right? And as I say all this, encourage you just to go into it from a like spirit of not encouragement, but of experiment. Like just experiment with this and see what happens and give yourself a couple weeks. Now, there are many people after they do this for a couple weeks, they find themselves ready for another kind of step towards non-diet work like intuitive eating. But I've had clients that I worked with who basically use these for years, and that's okay. If you have been in the throes of an eating disorder for decades, if you've been told you've had a diet for decades, if you live in a body that's marginalized and you're always told that you should eat less, you may find that you just need this and that's as far as you want to go. And I want to let you know that that is fabulous because this is a tool that can help you have enough. It can help you have flexibility. And, there may be a time where you have more access or you have the ability to rely on more on your body and to experiment with more. So then you can go with it. There's like no exactness with this at all. Okay, so I'm gonna end this live because I gotta eat my lunch. And like I said, part 2, I'm gonna be recording a podcast episode later today that I will drop next week that will have part 2. So what do you do after you do these check-in props? What do you do? Again, this is how to help yourself at diet rock bottom part 1. So part 2 will be on the podcast next week. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to tell you. Well, just keep in mind that I do have this book available if you would like to have more tools or if you want to just have this printed out nicely. And I also have been doing a book discussion every week in my Substack. So if you want some book discussion questions to kind of dig even deeper, you can find that all on my Substack, and the link to it is below. And then lastly, if you have PCOS and you want to apply some of these techniques, I am here to help. That is like my like intersection of what I'm most skilled at helping is helping people with PCOS to also do non-diet work. And I have a membership called PCOS Power that you can join anytime. And in there, you can tag me and ask me a question anytime you want. But if you do want to work one on one, I have a very limited amount of spots open currently where you can work with me one on one and ask me any questions, get personal help. And I even have a way for us to meet, of course, on Zoom or something like that. But then I also have an ability to ask me questions throughout the week as well over on Boxer. So if you want to have more connection during it while you're going through some of these tools, I am happy to help. I do have a limited number of spots currently in the summer before I start my next project that I can't announce yet, but is coming soon. I'm so excited about it. All right. So that is all for me today. Thank you so much for joining. And I always love feedback. So let me know how this goes. If it doesn't go well, I would love to know too. And also, if there's anything you would like to hear more about in the non-diet space, PCOS space, insulin resistance, let me know because I kind of just do what I'm wanting to do on these lives, but I come here every Monday. So I'm happy to provide any information that you're hoping to get. So you can add it in the comment below, or you can just message me however and all the million ways that we can message each other. But enjoy the week. I hope this helped you have a Monday that was not a diet and it helps carry you through this week. And I look forward to seeing you next week on another live. Thanks all.